I wanted to make up stickers. My big idea around anti-tagging device is to make up a sticker that says place tag here. Because it's like this psychological assault on the taggers' want and desire to be rebellious, because by putting the tag inside the box, they're actually adhering to the, it's like a bit of a...
It's, what do you call it? What's the psychology term?
Reverse psychology. Yeah.
That should be the name of this podcast.
Reverse psychology.
RadDads Psychology.
RadDad, yes.
All right, how are we going to start?
We lent into so much in terms of recapping. I think it's interesting to kick off today and talk about almost like expectations. I think expectations on everybody is a really interesting thing, but particularly expectations on dads, because it's like, we jump back in an episode and we're talking about the recap and what was, and it was easy.
Yeah.
And it was exciting and it was fun. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, we've just created this this giant expectation on ourselves.
Yes.
And it was interesting, and without getting too existential too quickly, it's almost like the expectation, I think now in the reincarnation of this podcast, is that we're real. It's been busy. How's it been for you?
It's been busy. The bit I'm struggling with RadDads is like there's a whole version of this that people never know because the internet was kind of set up a bit different. So it doesn't all fit in a RSS feed anymore. We've created this, like a YouTube, I guess, playlist, but it's just our first video. So like long-time listeners will be like, oh, those dudes. But new people coming in will be like, who are those dudes, And I guess what I want to say is we're you.
Yeah, 100%.
We're like, I'm sure if we were, beautiful to look at and we were maybe 10 years younger, they'd call us influencers.
Yeah.
But even 10 years ago when we were younger, we weren't really influencers, but we were in those spaces.
It was art imitating life.
Yeah.
A mirror being held up to the reality of trying to make it with what we knew and just, grinding and hustling.
But you and I have always been interested in like what's the behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And we were fascinated with someone like Casey Neistat, who, when we first kind of came across that and we're kind of, I guess, talking about it, reacting to it, it was under the veil of, wow, this is a guy who is trying to put a real version of himself out there daily and on this mega grind. And of course, what we've found out is that was part of the story. Like everything is part of the story. Like our sharing of ourselves is part of the story. And that there is no kind of answers, that anything consistent is hard. And I guess what we had to do is check off the mics and check into life and make that our grind, and so we've maybe just subconsciously looped back around. Not that it's any less difficult.
No.
Not that there isn't still giant expectations on two middle-aged dads, in the thick of parenting with a variety of ages between us and, marriages that are ticking up the years, and we start being in this kind of age bracket where we remember what life was like before, when you could say Russia without any other connotations, when Israel was just a place in the world. Of course, it's always been an interesting space in the world, but for the majority of our life, it was just another place, and you could go there and you could do things. And I think that, what I'm trying to say is we've got memories now, which are so interesting.
Yeah.
There's versions of us being dads, even on these podcasts, which is, they're kind of old school, Will and Greg. They're our little mates now.
What do you think what do you think if you were to, because obviously, I mean, it's impossible to distill down everything into, a nice tidy box. But if you were to reflect on your view of the world back then, when we first started to capture what it was to be a dad and what it is now, what would be the two I guess, the two things that you think have shifted the most significantly in terms of perspective, just either on yourself or on the world at large? Because I think that's the thing, is not only is the world out here changing, but the world in here is changing as well.
Yeah.
And that's often, dads and males, I mean, people in general, but I think there is a special sort of subcategory of fathers who do or put a lot of work into responding to the external, but not a huge amount of work responding to the internal. I'm interested.
Yeah. Well, I think you asked for two things. One, I think that let's say 10 years ago, I thought we were a bit more hopeful about the internet. I think we thought it might connect us a bit more. That was kind of pre-knowing that there's some tomfoolery in the algorithms. We just looked at algorithms maybe as, if your thing goes viral, that means people like it. But of course, we weren't aware that that data was being mined. You are being mined, And I think also that we were kind of outsourcing our connection, which led to these kind of worse outcomes. It meant we were super vulnerable when something was inevitable, like COVID. That again, we outsourced it again. We said, we just got to get connected. But the only thing I can think that was good for our country to be connected, apart from, having the world at your fingertips, is like Rugby World Cup. Remember 2011 when, or maybe it was 15, when there was a platform change. It went to Spark or something. And everyone was like, old codgers can't watch it now. What are we going to do? What if you don't have Sky? Because Sky didn't have the rights. And so the country went into meltdown trying to work out how to connect us all. And oddly, that was what kept people connected during COVID. But, it still loops back around for me that there's a drama there around connection, and you need each other, and kind of history told us that, but we were quick to forget,
Can you identify anything that's changed in your own personal perspective? Because obviously there's the world at large. But just thinking about, if you were to reflect on knowing how you see the world, or how you saw the world versus how you see the world now, or even just changes in yourself, just in terms of approach. Because I think that's the thing, is so often we trip ourselves up when we believe that we're a fixed point in time, we're at some sort of destination and the world revolves around us. I keep meaning to send you that there's this great video of, don't mistake malice for what was, ignorance, basically. That so often we jump to this conclusion of believing that someone's overlooking of us in whatever way, shape or form it is, whether they don't see us as a person or they cut in front of us or whatever, is somehow attributed to malicious intent, when in fact it's actually just pure ignorance, because we only view our world through these two eyes of ours, and I think we don't spend enough time stopping to go, well, actually, like, I'm not limp-wristed. I'm not any less of a person committed to truth if I shift my views or my perspectives on certain things, because and I think we've had this conversation before, as a father, as a husband, as a people leader, I am only the summation of my response to particular inputs at particular points in time. That's who I am. I'm not anything, you know what I mean? And it's like, we have some psychologists would say that we have some underlying traits and what have you, but that stuff can actually change. So, I mean, if you were to look back, do you think anything significance changed? I
think I may have said to you before, and maybe even on this podcast, I was one of those lucky people who just kind of grew up with people who loved me. But I knew in my gut that it's kind of I'm ill prepared for the world, because the world is kind of a bit more doggy dog, and I've been on a journey to try and understand that, my fascination with psychology and philosophy and the yin and yang and where we sit, what things like religion try and, like they give us something to outsource so you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulder. But again, it's this idea of, proof and fiction and nonfiction and reality and imagination and all these things that that always butt up against each other. And so, it's a bit like being a dad too. Some days are amazing, some days are horrible, some days you've got an answer, some days you don't. And I think you can literally drive yourself crazy by worrying about it. And the challenge is to how to not worry about it all the time, because it's definitely worth worrying about. I every now and then I get fascinated by space, and particularly around like the moon landings, and I watch this documentary, and like I just believe that they did it, but they probably had a backup. A lot was on the line, so they probably had filmed something, and maybe something, if it dropped out, someone said just chuck a still frame in, because no one's going to know. And of course, history remembers everything. But there was an idea that after they made it to the moon, everyone's like, okay, well, that race is done. And there was no pressure. And so what happened? Nothing. And then a long time went, and like our generations came up and like, where's our moon landing? I want to see that. That inspired, you told us it inspired nations, so why isn't that always happening? And I think what it is like, there's that fear. They're going to beat us, and I have that fear that I'll wake up one day and I've got to say to my family, that's us, team, there's no more money. So time to ask for help, I guess, and that's a really scary thing for a father to think. I don't know if you've seen, what's the Will Smith movie, Pursuit of Happiness?
Yeah.
That scene where he's in the bathroom because he's got nowhere to stay and there's someone trying to kick open the door. I mean, if that thing doesn't terrify you and it doesn't matter that he won, because he kept trying and that was the lesson maybe, but super freaky to think that we're all capable of having nowhere to stay, and so does that drive you? Yes. Can it make you go crazy? Yes. What's the balance? I don't know. If you ask me, which you kind of have today, it's about maybe just have a few more variables in your control. And how do you do that? Well, I don't really know, but I think it's about, you can't go out to the world trying to prove that you're you. And I think that's where a lot of businesses make mistakes. They spend their time trying to prove you're not you, that you're not who you say you are, and like, it's interesting, right? Because no one asks your partner or your kids, who is he? Who are they? It's just like, is this record of you, and it's that HR kind of weird record, And I know we all have complications with that, but I think life challenges you, and maybe that's a more religious aspect of things too, that those are things put on you that you've got to kind of triumph. But certainly, I think that's a part of me that maybe understands at a deep level that you've got to kind of confront it. And if you don't, then you just get swept up in the tide of other people's, of their dreams.
Yeah. And I mean, we've had this conversation numerous times before as well, but I think if I'm hearing what you've said, it's almost learning to lean into mystery. There is an inherently mysterious part of living that's really hard to reconcile when, these roles that we take on as fathers and as partners and husbands and whatever, whether it's the social convention of hundreds of years of whatever, or whether it's physiological, whatever, we have this conflict because those roles have traditionally craved certainty. Our job, or at least the perception of our job, has been to ensure certainty. To ensure that our kids know that it's going to be okay, and our partners know that it's going to be okay, and that's been this, I guess, this traditional model. But as connectivity and the digital evolution is taking place and what have you, there's been more and more information, which ironically, in the information age, I think there's been just this massive uptick in mystery, because, well, where does truth, like you start getting into some really, really big meaty things like absolute truth and excuse me, where does that sit, and all the rest of it. And I think there's this evolution of that role as a father to go, My job is to help those around me, whether they be the people that I lead at work, whether they be my kids, whether they be in partnership with, with my wife or partner or whatever, is to be able to sit in mystery and to have tool sets to be able to go, I'm okay with not knowing that. And writing that line between being ignorant to something and not informed versus being okay with mystery, because they can look very, very similar.
Absolutely.
And I think I guess it's a bit more of a delicate dance, and it's almost a bit like when you see, the big clunkhead rugby players going out on Dancing with the Stars and having to learn these delicate dances for the first time. There's an awkwardness that comes with it,
yes. And just looping from what you said back around to how I brought up space, in this documentary I watched, actually it was 60 Minutes, and they had Neil Armstrong.
Right.
The guy.
Yeah.
12 people, whatever, walked in space or on the moon. He was first. Came up with the line, I don't know if it was off the cuff or not, but he has one regret. Do you know what he said his regret is?
No.
He wished he had spent more time with his family. Because to take on that burden of being the guy, people first, he didn't get to spend time. And so there's another dichotomy. That's a Greg word, isn't it? Dichotomy. D. Why? D-I-C-H, I think. Well, there we go. ChatGPT will fix my spelling. It's like it's almost like I want to say there can be two right answers and two wrong answers about everything. But we've got ourselves into trouble with that rubric or that measurement, because some things there are right answers. And other things, there's just answers, The
answer can be yes and yes. Yeah.
And if you really think about that, that's very scary, because you can apply that to, really horrible things. And that's not what we want to do. We want to use the gut judgment, But of course, that's the beauty of time as well, which we're experiencing, and why we've kind of come back to this podcast, because, you can't control it, and you inevitably learn things, and you take on different bits and add to who you are, and so do your kids. And I think, the bit that's interesting for all dads, that's what unites us, is that's always on your mind. It's not just sometimes. You just carry that with you, and you always will. And it's like a really weird thing to hold.
No, I think, that challenge of, and I think that's, if I was to say, reflect on what I think the biggest change is there's been a real internalization. For the longest time we looked externally to external factors to try and find ourselves in the world, and how did I measure up, because we had this abundance of data and information, and I could place my views next to the next person's views and this, that, and the other thing. And I think, the age of those metrics is almost, in a way, we're reaching that saturation point where we're going full circle, and it's now becoming internalized again, where it's like, well, who am I? What do I stand for? Where do I, what am I prepared to, what is the mess that I'm prepared to walk past? What is my bottom line in terms of what will make me stop in the street to help, when it is now so easy because you're so overwhelmed with so much stuff? Do I regress all the way into myself and only deal with what's immediately around me, my family and the four walls that I exist in? Or am I someone that's able to exist, 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer, 4 layers out from that? And I think that's what, that's, for me, that's the change, is like that burden of introspection and having to really wrestle with who I am. And because I guess, when we first started this, like you say, a lot of that stuff wasn't in your face. That uncertainty wasn't there, and it's interesting, because it isn't a ones and zeros equation anymore. It's far more subjective than that.
Yeah, everything is trying to give you the experience that you desire, and there's kind of like less and less common things that do that. Maybe sport at the highest, All Black for New Zealanders gave people something to kind of, we're all synced at the same time. But now one person might be looking at stats. Someone might be having a hot dog. Someone's waiting for the cool music between the game. It's maybe getting, it's way intimate. And I guess we haven't asked, is that a good thing? Is that great to be intimate about every single thing? Or is it, I don't really know what I'm trying to say. I guess there's a mixture of, for me, it's like you zoom out, you zoom in, and you're always having to do that. You have to learn, what do you need to zoom out on? For me, it's like maybe some of those huge questions that, okay, let's just say, I'm happy to say there's probably an energy that guides us somehow. Do I need to zoom in and understand it? Maybe. Or maybe I just need to stay on the energy level, If I needed to see it, maybe I'd be able to have a different set of ways that my eyes worked, Maybe I can feel it. Maybe that conjures up in certain scenarios. And then there's things I really need to zoom in on, like you probably need to zoom in on your bank account and just make sure that you can get to next stage, But again, sometimes you got to zoom out from the bank account because you drive yourself nuts worrying about the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was like I was saying. For the longest time, we spent trying to differentiate ourselves from everybody around us. What made us different? What made us better? And it was this sort of arms race. But what do you do when everybody's now different? You look, and for some people, rightly so. They've finally been given a voice to find their identity and all the rest of it. But the social systems that are supposed to keep the wheels of just life and what have you turning, they're being challenged. And so I think that question now becomes, well, what makes us the same? And that's not what makes us the same that overlooks the individual identities that have emerged over the past 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. But it's actually going, well, that's how we rationalize mystery, is to go, well, you and I are going to be on fundamentally different pages about certain things, but there are certain things that do make us the same. There are those universal truths that bring us together in and around, especially things like parenting, father. And we referenced it in the last podcast that we did, that and I think maybe that's why we're back at the table, because we want to have that conversation around, well, what does make us the same? Yeah. What makes us, what are those things, those wrestles, those experiences, those universal, to our our atheist brothers, our Muslim brothers, our, conspiracy, internet brothers, like to any one of the subsets of groups that have popped up where people have found themselves finding, a renewed sense of identity, but potentially have found themselves alienated from, those support systems. Well, actually, let's flip the camera around.
Yeah. I mean, I explore this through my work with podcasts, right? So what I can tell you is that we're different until our environment makes us the same. So, basically I was explaining to you what I did yesterday in the studio is I had parents and their kids, and they're actually different creatures, Yes, they're related and they have similar, DNA, but they're different. They're different ages, they're different experiences, they have different responsibilities, so they're different. And you could say that, for our Muslim brothers and sisters, we're different. So there's similarities. And I think it's up to, I guess that's why I didn't like how we've outsourced ourselves to the internet, because it only focuses on those differences. It's harder to see the similarities. And I'll give you an example in a podcast. So you have to have the space work for you. And it's a very interesting concept for most people who won't get that. And I haven't got it. You just go to a room, right? Well, rooms are all different too. I'm staggered when I walk through businesses how many meeting rooms they've got, because that's an interesting feature, isn't it? Yeah. What is that actually trying to do? Clearly there's a need to connect, and it's like, okay, but we can't really we've got one kitchen, maybe we've got to have all these meetings, and so, but in the podcast space, I'm fascinated because the parent and the child are eye to eye, like we're looking at each other.
Yeah.
You know, they've both got one microphone each. It's like there's symmetry here, you know? And then each have advantages. So the parent has expertise and time on their side. But the young person's worked with me to prepare questions, so they know what they're going to say. So each is still different, but if you can find a kind of harmony in it, then we're the same, you know? And so what happens is everyone kind of knows what they're expected to do. And I wonder if that's what we're talking about. We're not quite sure what we're expected to do, you know, and that maybe scales all the way up and all the way down because there's so many blurred boundaries now. And,
100%. And I think, again, you know, I think that's probably timely as to why we find ourselves back at this table as well, is that I think we've had those big seasonal changes especially in our own kids. And I think those expectations have changed around, well, what is my role? You know, in the last 10 years, I know for our family it's been a real journey of understanding things like neurodiversity. You know, what does the neurodivergent brain look like? How much do I educate my kid on their susceptibility to particular traits versus how much do I hold back? How much do I give them the ability to understand themselves versus how much do I avoid giving them a crutch to, you know, like the days of you and I growing up, whereas it was just, you know, suck it up, boy, move on. And we know that that's not the right approach. We know that that has all manner of unintended consequences that are ultimately, you know, a lot of the time negative, because it overlooks a lot of some of the really serious underlying issues that we've learnt lots more about. But man, like trying to make head or tail, you know, we're wrestling with, like I say, you know, does some of those neurodiverse traits exist in some of the kids, and you know, how much do we tell them? And then you're faced with, you know, really confronting statistics like, oh, okay, cool, ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD, people are 50% more likely to develop a long-term drug or alcohol habit. You're like, flip, well, what's my job here? You know, what is my job? You feel notoriously under-equipped as a parent to go, well, like, I'm a simple dude. Like, I don't want to pander, but I've got to, you know, I've got to work this out somehow, you know. But I think, again, the irony of all that is doing something is the only option, but knowing exactly what to do is not an option. You know, and it's and like inactivity is not an option. You have to do something, but you're not going to know what to do until you do it, which is terrifying.
Well, it is terrifying, and that's where like the concepts of leap of faith really started to make sense to me. Because I guess, you know, revisiting my childhood, I don't have giant things that I think I need to overcome. There's no reason to leap. And I believe that's correct. You know, you should lean on those things when needed, that it doesn't have to be, you know, because we're not all the same and we all have different paths, and that's shown in how we look, how we feel, how we're all slightly different. Otherwise, we'd be all the same, right? Yeah. I mean, if whatever design created us, it's like everyone's slightly a version of themselves. And that's kind of, you'd like to think, cool. You know, I guess the tricky bit is that, you know, that leap of faith only came into focus when it was kind of like, man, I've got a window here into how people can treat others. And this is a power struggle, you know, and this is someone challenging you at your core about who you are. And if you're not prepared for that, you better get ready to take that leap. Because you've got to go on that journey to be like, are they correct or am I right? And so that's why it's registering what you're saying about parenting, because that is a leap of faith that it will work out. And like it doesn't for a lot of people. It's too hard, because it is really hard, you know. And, you know, you'd like to think our podcast and whatever's going out there can kind of maybe motivate someone to, you know, hang in there, because it's certainly, I think, a game of, just like a movie, hang in there till the end. it might just come right, you know?
I don't think it reminds me a little bit of the conversation we're having, the many conversations we have off here on the phone. But just talking about, I'm really fortunate to have come to know mate Jed Milden, New Zealand's the world's first triple then quadruple backflip on a BMX bike. And really unpacking the concept of fear through a guy like him, where he has countless people that come up to him, oh man, you just must be fearless, and this, that, and the other thing. You don't get scared. And the really cool thing that I really love and appreciate about Jed is he's really transparent. He goes, absolutely, I get scared, but there's a process. But what he also talks about, which I think is a really interesting translation into parenting as well, as action sports requires something of you where you are all in. You roll into that ramp for the first time. The time that you are going to get hurt, or possibly even worse, is the time that you are not all in. And you make that decision not as you're coming up and rolling into the jump to do the backflip. You make that decision at the top of the ramp from when you hit that first pedal. And I think that's such a real tangible challenge for us as parents as well, is like, you can't be half in. You can't, against the backdrop of all of these really heady philosophical challenges and changes that we're having to navigate as parents in a world that, if I'm honest, becomes probably a little bit scarier each day. I think it's just that challenge is to remain all in, whatever that looks like for you. Remain all in, because the second that you pull out and you hesitate and you have that little bit of doubt, that is when, that backflip comes unstuck on you and you land on your head, or, you break something or whatever. But also, conversely, there are no guarantees. And that's the other thing that I love about the process is that you're all in, but just because you're all in, it doesn't mean that you won't crash, because there's other factors. But it's that point in time where you sit at the top of the ramp and you read the weather, you look at the weather, what's the sun doing? Is it damp? Or an assessment of the situation, and then you're in. And you're in until you're either in it until you land and you stick it and you ride away, or you crash and you get up and you go back up to the top of the ramp and you go again. And it just has to be the process. And then as a parent, you begin to go, all right, well, how do I deconstruct my fear? Where is my fear coming from? What are the monkeys that I have to get off my back to be able to pedal into that ramp full noise? And I know it's, as we've spoken, it's something that's really, really stuck with me. And I think there's a lot that can be taken from it.
Yeah, I think what I'm taking away too is like, just connecting a few dots for me is you've got to really do the work with yourself to work out what's worth being all in about. Because I don't think that's obvious. Parenting's a great kind of one that hits you, that is worth all in, and you've got to decide that it's worth it. And that happens kind of after, because you're kind of a parent before the hard work starts. Remember, you're kind of growing this thing. I mean, mum, this is a whole different podcast for them. And they've got their podcast, they're kind of going through it from the day dot. But we get to essentially be a dad without having been a dad yet. And then you get thrust into this thing, and it's a kind of beautiful design, because it's suggesting to you, these are some of the feelings you might feel. And then it's like, okay, see you at the end, forever, go. But yeah, I mean, certainly if dads should be hearing this from more dads, you should definitely be all in. And it's a fear worth having. It's a risk worth taking. And it will work. A little bit like our careers. I think I may have told you on the phone, one of the things that's given me slight comfort as I go on this voyage is, like, if you think about it every day, you're a problem solver. You'll solve it, because it's not, your brain's wonderful. It's going to think when it's going to exhaust you, but make sure it's something worth owning your brain for, like parenting and how you're going to make a buck doing something you love. that's two things that I think are good things to worry about, and like, oh, cool. So I know I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm all in, and I'm just going to like keep my eyes open. Oh, that person knows how to do it. Let's see if I can.
Well, because that was going to be my question. I just, to, I guess, break it down into real practical. I mean, from your perspective, if you were to go brass tacks, what does actually being all in on as a parent, what does that look like in real terms as far as, day-to-day practical, and again, knowing that that's an internal struggle. Yeah. Like, we sit here and we say, oh, yeah, all in parenting, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, like, on the first, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, geez, it's a real busy time for
Absolutely.
us as a family. And we're literally, there are days where we're hanging on by a thread, and there are days where I'm probably not all in. But I think that doesn't take away the need to come back to the aspiration. So, but yeah, I'm just interested to understand from your perspective, what do you think, in real terms, what would that look like?
Well, I just think I love things that are in the word, so because I'm not complicated. So Rad Dad is like, everything's there for you, pal.
It's laid out.
You just be rad.
Laid
and
out
if you're not being rad, try harder to be rad, And if you can't try harder, then there's a lesson there that, you need to find a way to be rad. And I think all in is a similar type of word for me, or, phrase or sentence or couple words together. It's not all in on a Tuesday. It's not all in, when the wheels are turning, because the wheels are coming off. It's all in regardless. And that might not mean that you're the best dad tomorrow night or tonight, or you have been, Of course, all dads make mistakes. We come from dads who have made mistakes. Some are huge, some are hard to get over, some are small, That's just the lottery of life. But all in means that you will be that punching bag for them, that you'll have your heart broken, that you'll be proud of them, that you might have to face the family. Like I have a fear of that. Sorry, team, I tried. I thought I was following this. I thought I was all in on my career, but we're stuffed, And I think that's all you can do is just be. There's nothing you're going to do today that's going to fix it, because it has to be a lifelong journey. And you won't ever know if you succeeded. The best maybe I can think about is, think about your final breaths. Would you hope that your kids think you love them? If the answer is yes, I would say that's pretty much all in. It doesn't have to mean they like you, that they think you're cool, that you did a good job. Just, I wonder if it's like, did they feel belonged? Maybe that's what I'm, and going back to podcasting, I feel like people belong when they're talking to each other. That's why I like podcasting. You belong in a moment, it's you and I syncing up. It's all those things. But yeah, I mean, and all out is just the contrary to that. My dad didn't give a shit about me.
Yeah.
He didn't take care of me. He had his own issues. I'll forgive you because you had your own issues.
Yeah.
And I'll try and be all in.
Yeah.
And I
think it's that, I think all in ultimately is about being prepared to actively work towards minimizing regret. It's almost like that, that's being all in. I'm all in to go, I will stop at nothing to minimize the regrets that I have, because life says that you will have some.
Yeah.
But I think if the intent is to minimize and mitigate as many of those as you can, and like I said, I love the fact that you're like, it doesn't mean that you were the best mates and it was shiny, happy, smiley, happy, clappy, no issues. But I think it's that intent to go, like you say, when it's all said and done, can I honestly look back and go, yep, there might have been some things that I would do differently, but I have as fewer regrets about my time. And it allows you to balance or to juggle those expectations of, well, did I provide enough? Was I around enough? Was I available enough? Was I kind enough? Did I, all of those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Is going, well, only you are going to know what you're going to regret.
Yeah.
And sometimes even then you don't know.
Absolutely. And rad dads doesn't mean rad kids, you know, like that's its own journey.
Yeah.
And I think if you take the pressure off, you know, you could be a great dad, but I guess maybe we've never quite articulated this, but a rad dad is just someone who's trying to think about what they've got themselves into, trying to think, man, there's these people that I helped create and they're like here. And, I've got to try and not put all of this burden on them. So you're withholding stuff, you're hoping for yourself that you can get it right. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And, that's just how it is. But, that's always how I've felt about it, is that we're talking about it. We're trying to at least acknowledge that wouldn't it be cool to be a rad dad,
but also I think even beyond that, helping people, and dads especially, understand that there is also other people with maybe entirely different circumstances or details, but the aspiration remains the same. And there's got to be some solidarity in finding connection with people who aspire to the same things you do.
Absolutely.
Because I think I alluded to it in our last podcast as well. I also know the darkness of feeling alone. And I think that is the one thing that when you've sat in that space where you've felt like there is nothing around, it is the one thing when you come out the other side of it and you do, we use the H word, you begin to heal, you begin to kind of feel that different version of yourself. When you go, there is absolutely no way I could possibly wish that on my worst enemy. And again, if you take nothing else from the conversation today, that whatever the wrestle, whatever the struggle, whatever the thing that just keeps you up at night, doesn't make sense, it makes you feel isolated, disconnected, or whatever, there is somebody somewhere who aspires for the same things as you do for your family. And there's someone that is happy to listen and happy to talk about it.
And look, if you can't find those people, sometimes it's your burden to carry, but it's a good burden to carry. It's the best burden to carry. It's the closest one that you can think of that is majestic. It's something you created, and if you're breaking it, then you've got to fix it. And that's metaphorical and all of that type of stuff too, because certainly we are not perfect, know, and, but I just think, tell me what's a better burden to carry. What, you want to be the best salesperson? You want to have the most followers online? Like, you want to walk on the moon? Even that dude said he wished he spent more time with his kids. So, that's I love it. I think it's an interesting journey. It's certainly a voyage, being a parent, and some days you have it together and other days you don't, and may long it continue.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the people that have engaged with our first lot of content as well. It's such a weird and such a vulnerable place to sit in, because again, I think we'll be the first to admit, first crack around, we were trying to hack the algorithm. We were trying to find the whiz bang and the flash and the stuff that would engage people and not manufacture, because I don't think there was ever an intent of there was never a fakeness about what we were trying to do, but we're trying to be the light bulb to the moth. And this time around it's a bit more tempered, a bit more measured. There's a bit more grey in our beds to say, hey, we just want to be available to chat. And it's really heartening being able to see people like and share and interact with content, going, hey, this resonates. And I guess for as long as people do that, we'll keep talking.
Absolutely.
If no one gives a crap after this, we'll probably keep talking anyway, and we'll just make a decision on whether we capture it or not for our own benefits or whatever. But yeah, I guess it's just that thing of going, I just love being in the presence of people who are brave enough to get beyond the immediacy of what they can see and touch around them. to become better humans, because that requires a level of bravery to go, you know what? I have to think out here to get better at here.
Yeah.
And especially for guys, it's so stigmatized.
And especially for Kiwi guys.
Yeah.
Because we have I'm not all in on the tall poppy thing, but I understand the sentiment.
Yeah.
We're a bit funny with people doing well, and I don't think that is correct, and maybe that's changing. Yeah. But there's this kind of fake humbleness, and gets us into trouble. We have to. The humbleness is really suppressing something else, and you got to drink your way through that, and that's not a good trait. It can't just be that you're the life of the party after a drink.
Yeah,
you got to find other strategies there, and so I think we're vastly outnumbered in New Zealand with dads who don't think like we do. So that's why I think it's cool what we do, because it's slightly, different. And some people might say, oh, you guys are artists and creatives. It's easier for you to express. Well, maybe, but
it hasn't always been like that though as well. And again, I just think, I always, I come back to, and I know, and again, we have this conversation in love, and it's like, I know, like that whole idea of we all do have something to heal from. And when we commit to that journey of healing ourselves, we heal those around us. And if the healing is simply to have the conversation, then it's a double whammy. There's only upside. For all of the cost that comes from having to wrestle with that stuff internally, you feel better about yourself. The people around you feel better about you because you're happier in and of yourself, and you're a truer, more authentic version of whoever it is that people around you have signed up to interact with. So it's all upside. And I just would love for this conversation to just normalize guys, especially being honest about going, you know what, that sucked, or that was hard, but that's okay, because I can find a way to view this that's productive and helpful, or I can reach out to people for help.
Rad.
It's so funny. It is decidedly, it's different, man. It's different. But it's exciting.
Good though.
It's cool.
And it's always going to be like that, right?
Yeah.
And one thing we didn't mention is sometimes dads get it wrong, but you hang in there long enough, you get another crack as a grandparent. And I've seen plenty of grandparents do a better job.
Yeah.
So there's this weird thing that, who knows, that'll be a whole nother experience when
Rad granddads.
Doesn't
roll off the tongue quite as good, but I'm sure we can make it
We'll probably get a sponsor, one of those, old folks' homes.
Yeah. Brought to you by Bupa Healthcare.
We make you coffee and wipe your bum. All right. See you, Greg.
See you, man.